Resident Evil is one of the cornerstones of horror gaming, and Resident Evil 2 is one of the most popular in the series. So much so that Capcom are bringing it back with Resident Evil 2 Remake, an all-new, totally upgraded take. But you might not know that the Resident Evil 2 you got to play wasn't Capcom's first go at a sequel. Tucked away in the Resident Evil 2 Remake Digital Deluxe Edition DLC is an Eliza Walker costume for Claire Redfield, a character that never actually appeared in the series and a nod to an unreleased attempt at a sequel that was, according to then director Hideki Kamiya, 70% complete when it died. This is a story of that lost sequel, Resident Evil 1.5. What makes this aborted sequel so interesting is that Capcom continued to use it to promote the game for nearly a year in videos, magazine screens and demos. As director Hideki Kamiya once explained, Resident Evil 2 was receiving attention as one of Capcom's new big titles, and the studio wanted to keep the excitement high. Fans spent months looking at a game completely different to the one they eventually got, and when that arrived, they were a little bit confused. Over time, that's given Resident Evil 1.5 an almost legendary status. Unlike other cancelled games, it had been widely seen and played. Even the mildest of Resi fans has heard something about this other game, starring a beat cop called Leon S. Kennedy and a motorbiking college student named Eliza Walker, fighting zombie apes and human spider hybrids. Originally, Resident Evil 2 was scheduled for a May 1997 release date. This was a game that still starred Leon S. Kennedy, but not quite as you remember. He was still a cop, but it wasn't his first day. He was an experienced officer trapped in the Raccoon City police station following the Raccoon City outbreak. At the same time, Eliza Walker would have been a completely new character, a college student and motorcycle racer returning to Raccoon City just as a zombie outbreak started. After Eliza crashes her bike into the RPD building, the two characters would embark on separate stories, linked only by locations and a few shared characters to escape the undead uprising. This original sequel saw the development team try out a number of interesting new ideas. Characters had lower polygon counts, enabling more zombies to appear on screen. The monsters were to change over time, with mutation mentioned as a new ability by producer Shinji Mikami. Similarly, the pre-rendered backgrounds that define the original series could be altered according to story events. Even Leon and Elza's outfits would change to show damage as they were attacked, or they could equip different clothes and armour for extra protection and storage. There were tonal changes too. Leon and Elza would never actually meet. Instead, Leon would be joined by Marvin Branner, the doomed policeman of Resi 2, using a placeholder model here as a more active character in the 1.5 build, and Ada Wong, at this point an Umbrella scientist. Elza, on the other hand, would meet John, a civilian hiding in the RPD who later went on to become the gun shop owner Robert Kendo in Resident Evil 2, and Roy, a cop who later turns into a zombie, again here just a placeholder in unfinished code. Both would meet Sherry and William Birkin, two characters that connect the cancelled Resident Evil 1.5 and 2. Sherry is actually one of the main ways of identifying early footage and screens, because for most of 1.5's development she wore a yellow outfit, later replaced by the blue and white of 2. And, just like in the eventually released Resident Evil 2, William would chase his daughter, Sherry, through the game. Although here he shows a significantly more basic mutation. The original story saw both heroes fight through the police station, battling zombies and T-virus infected guerrilla bioweapons that escaped from Umbrella vans. From there the action moved into the sewers and eventually a factory and an Umbrella lab facility. However, as the 1.5 version approached its May 1997 release date, no one at Capcom appeared happy with it. Individual parts worked, but it wasn't coming together. In a 1998 interview for a tips guide, Shinji Mikami stated that no element was specifically boring, just everything as a whole, adding in another interview that it was no fun. The police station was a particular target. Based on the modern normal buildings found in 1976's movie Assault on Precinct 13, it appeared clean and boring after the first game's mansion. We saw that the second floor, third floor and basement all had the same look, explained Mikami. It was redesigned using photos of Western-style buildings in Kyoto, Osaka and Nagoya, according to Kamiya. The team had snuck in to take them, getting caught along the way and told off. Even the idea to use more enemies wasn't working. Mikami explained that we focused on making zombies with as few polygons as possible in order to show as many of them on the screen at one time, but those zombies weren't really scary at all, even when there were many of them. The team also disliked the fact that, aside from the zombies and Umbrella, there was no link to the previous game. Unsure what to do or how to fix it, Capcom brought in Noboru Sugimura, then a professional scriptwriter, as a consultant for help. His advice? Start again. The game was delayed as the devs started to pull apart what they had. The changes immediately started to create a more recognisable Resident Evil 2. Instead of starting in the police station and fighting your way out, Sugimura suggested players should start on the streets and fight their way in, creating a greater sense of both the outside danger and the safety inside. The RPD was turned into a preposterously repurposed Gothic art museum, and Eliza became Claire Redfield, Chris's younger sister and firm anchor to the original story. When the final version of Resident Evil 2 eventually came out in February 1998, Resident Evil 1.5 should have slowly faded from memory. Except it didn't. After all the times 1.5 had been used to promote the game, thousands of people had seen this other version, and they wanted it. What actually exists of 1.5 outside of Capcom is debatable, but for nearly 15 years, solid and persistent rumours floated around that at least one copy of the unfinished game existed out in the wild, what was referred to as the 40% or November build. But proving it was nearly impossible because so much information, video and imagery existed, it was easy for people to post a screen or a video, pretend they were playing it, and then disappear when too many questions were asked. The general perception in the late 90s and early 2000s was that a few lucky elite collectors had the game and they just weren't sharing. All that changed in 2011 when a copy of the 40% build finally turned up, allegedly bought for $9,000 by a group from a private collector. This group, called Team IGAS, short for I Got a Shotgun, a Resi in-joke, planned to rebuild and recreate the lost game, something that immediately split a volatile fanbase. Some people believed that only the pure 40% build counted, others called the restoration attempt with its additions and changes a Frankenstein version. None of that mattered though, as barely months into the restoration a build leaked. By 2013 the team made a version available for free that could be played on basic emulators, which gave us what's referred to as the Magic Zombie Door or MZD build. This was a hodgepodge of original code and reworked assets that attempt to create a playable interpretation of Capcom's intent. It included changes like Japanese language translation and the use of custom and repurposed assets to replace and recreate missing characters, rooms and puzzles from the videos and screens that had been released. The pure vanilla build or PvB version appeared soon after, named so because it was apparently the original unfinished development code used by Capcom. It's playable but only consists of a small portion of the game's opening. It's in Japanese, several models are unfinished, and various rooms are disconnected or connected in nonsensical ways, meaning it's only really playable using the debug menu to move around. It seems almost crazy now that fan interest in what was essentially a rough, unreleased draft of a game saw it pursued and investigated for 15 years. And it's even crazier that obsession paid off. If you know where to look, you can find and play it, and that exposure still hasn't dampened interest. One early thread about the game started in April 2012 and was last updated in July 2018, where progress on recreating the game is described as ticking along. Even the MZD build of the game, originally released back in 2013, was updated in June 2018 with a new patch. For a 22-year-old unfinished game that was never actually released, that's not bad going, and explains why, after all this time, a character that was never actually used gets a DLC skin. If you have any questions about Resident Evil 1.5, leave a comment below. Click on the boxes on the left for more content from us, and don't forget to hit that big button in the middle for more gaming news, previews, reviews and features right here on Games Radar Plus.